Okay, thank you everyone for joining. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so today we are talking about just listings in general. Hopefully start to finish, but we may not get to finish, but we'll talk about at least getting a home listed today. Robin brought up an interesting point before the meeting started about pre-marketing. So I want to pull up the legal bulletin regarding this. It's legal bulletin 198. There's a lot of information here. I'm going to paraphrase. Pre-marketing, quite simply, a listing means talking about a listing, telling people about a listing, posting about a listing, sending mailers about a listing before it is active on the MLS. Not like before you put in the MLS, before you literally press active and everybody can see it. I'm going to really briefly talk about why this is actually a really good rule, because it's important to know that this is not a rule that is just micromanaging on the MLS. The point of this rule is to create a fair playing field. So if you can imagine, if all these listing brokers were getting listing agreements signed and then not posting on the MLS and going and telling all their buyers and all their friends and everything that they have a property listed that they're going to be listing, and then one of their buyers wants to write an offer on it, and then they get to represent the buyer and the seller, and your buyer, who you've been working so hard to find a listing for, never gets an opportunity to see it. Number one, that's unfair to you. Number two, it's unfair to your buyer. And so it's one of those things that the rule is so important because it creates a fair playing field. So that's the point of the rule, and it really is a good rule in that sense, because you don't want people to you want everybody to be able to have a chance to write an offer. And lastly, it's really important for the seller, right? Because if I list a property, if I have a property that I'm going to list, and then I say, hey, I know we're going to list this next week, but I have a buyer who's really interested in writing an offer full price at $350, and my seller's like, oh, that's great. Well, how do you know as a seller that could be doing them a disservice, because they may have gotten $375 in a bidding war? So the only person who benefits from pre-listing a property is the listing broker. And so that's why the rule is there. It's really, really an important rule. Okay, now I'm going to say where it's a little gray. Actually, I wouldn't even say it's gray. Everything in here is talking about how it is a violation of an MLS rule to have a listing agreement signed and to pre-market a property. Now, if someone contacts me and they say, hey, going through, tight spot, we need to sell our property right now. I don't want to list it. I just want to get this sold. Okay, do you have any buyers for me? I don't have a listing agreement signed with them, right? It's not a violation to say, sure, let me talk to some clients I have and see if they have it. I should, because I have a fiduciary duty to my clients, and even though they're not officially my client, they're asking me as a licensed real estate broker for advice on selling their home and helping them sell their home. I should let them know, hey, I might have a buyer for you, but just so you know, it is almost always in your best interest to list a property so you have more buyers looking at your home and you get the max amount of money. And if they're like, no, I don't care, I just want to sell this property, technically I don't have a listing agreement signed with them, and so I can morally and legally go shop the property. Obviously, that's risky too, because the seller could be a liar, and they could, and my buyer could be a liar, and I could say, hey, buyer, I've got this home at 123 Main Street. That could be a good flip opportunity. Are you interested? And he says, oh yeah, let me look at it. And then he goes, knocks on the door, talks to the seller, and they do an off-market deal, and I don't make any commission. So it's a risk on both sides. And it's something that you should be really careful. And in general, follow the rule. But that's the only gray area, if that makes sense. If you do not have a listing agreement signed, technically you can't, it's not pre-marketing a listing, because it's not a listing. It's just you have a seller who doesn't want to list their property, or maybe they say they do want to list a property, but right now they just really would prefer to get an off-market deal. So it's gray, and I'm being really careful because this is being recorded and I don't want to say something wrong, but I've read through the rule multiple times, and I'm not going to tell you everything it says, but it's a big risk. It's actually, you can get a fine, and you can also, because you're violating the listing agreement, your commission can be voided. So don't do it if you have a listing agreement. Don't even flirt along the lines of it. And if you have any questions about this, let me know. But
there is kind of a second gray area when it comes to marketing plats. Because if it's new construction and the house hasn't been built and there's not the units divided up, you can market the plat before the houses are built.
yeah, and that's a really complicated rule, but I can explain that to you. I've done a lot of research into that. So that just really, really briefly, if you have a builder, they've got 10 lots that they're building on, and you list one lot, there's a certain listing agreement, I think it's called an LOA, it's in the MLS, that allows you to pre-market the other lots for sale. It's complicated though. Talk to me before you do that if you have any questions about it. Okay, any questions about that? Does that make sense for the most part? Okay, perfect. All right, guys. So as I said, today we are talking about the residential listing agreement, detailed review. So this is week 9 of our 12-week RevUP. So we're almost 3/4 of the way through. The next 3 weeks, we're going to be covering finding motivated sellers, winning the listing, and closing the sale. So we're not going to get into all these portions of representing the seller because we'll be talking about those in future meetings. Today, we're really talking about getting a property listed. So as always, we start off our RevUP with an affirmation. So today's affirmation is, I have the power to create all the success and prosperity I deserve. All right, guys, let's jump right into to listing paperwork. I'm going to read this note here, and then we're going to jump right into the forms. So the best place to start is to print out and read every line of your listing agreement and related documents. Can't emphasize this enough. Always don't hesitate to call me if you have questions about the listing paperwork. So I want to start with that, but I do want to say 99% of all your questions are answered in the 1A and in the adjacent listing documents. So if you're bored and you're having trouble sleeping, maybe print out the listing docs and read through them. It's crazy. All the information you'll find in there seriously, it answers like all your questions. So it is key that you understand what they mean, and more importantly, that you can explain them to your client. Gosh, this is so important. The 1A is only 2 pages, but there's so much legal jargon in there. So if you go to a listing appointment and you say, here's the 1A and this talks about commissions, go ahead and sign here. And they say, well, what is this? What does this mean? And you don't know, that's going to look pretty dumb, right? So you don't have to understand everything perfectly, but at least understand the headers, right? And we're going to go through that in just a second, at least briefly. So the more confident and comfortable you are with these documents, the more at ease your clients will be when completing them. It is recommended that you begin to write practice listing agreements, and then you can do so on a variety of property types and price ranges. Practice, practice, practice. Your ability to write clean and clear listing agreements will become one of your greatest value propositions for your client. All right, let's jump right in. On to express forms, and we're going to go listing forms here. Okay, so just like with purchase and sale agreements, you've got different purchase and sale agreements for multifamily and condos and all that. It's the same way with listing documents. So there's different listing documents for different types of listings. And if you're not sure if, manufactured homes, if there's a different one, just go to Express Forms, click on Listing Forms, and Manufactured Home Listing Input. Okay, so there is one. So that's kind of how that's one way you can figure that out. So let's talk about the most important form of the listing, the 1A. This is the document that you really want to get signed off first and foremost, and you don't need all the other documents signed before you get this one. This is one that you're kind of locking your client in, right? You're getting them to agree to market the property, to allow you to market the property and to agree to a commission. So let's just go through each line. I'm not going to read each word. I'm going to just go through each header. Section 1 is really just definitions. Section 2, agency and dual agency. This is really important. This is a good reminder when you're going through the 1A to talk about what a dual agency is. So what it says is seller authorizes firm to appoint Isaac Schaefer or whoever as the listing broker who's going to market the property. And that's a reminder, the seller authorizes firm to appoint Isaac Schaefer. That's a reminder that you tell your clients, your listing agreement is with my firm first and foremost, and I am the representative of my firm representing you, if that makes sense. The reason that's important is because, as you know, when you have a listing agreement signed with a seller, if anything happens to you, we as a firm are still responsible for representing that seller. So that just explains that really quick. But this, at the bottom portion of this paragraph, it talks about dual agency. I always encourage people when they're talking to a seller for the first time, or not for the first time, but when you're getting a 1A signed, you explain what dual agency is ahead of time so that they, when it comes up, it's not like, whoa, wait, what's happening? Because dual agency, as we've talked about in previous meetings, is I believe it's the #1 most common lawsuit in real estate against real estate agents occurs on a dual agency transaction. At least that was the case a couple of years ago when I saw that statistic. And so it's just a very delicate issue. So let's just talk really quickly about what a dual agency is. As I said already, the seller is, when they're signing a 1A, they are agreeing that Realty One Group Turnkey is going to represent them as the seller and market their property. Now, as we have continued to grow, we're almost at 50 agents. There is a decent chance that either myself as a listing broker or another agent in our office will want to write an offer on your home, Mr. or Mrs. Seller. And so what you want to do is explain to them what that means. I still have, first off, you as a seller have the right to say, no, I do not feel comfortable with the dual agency. A lot of people don't know that, but technically, if I have a listing and Debbie wants to write an offer on my listing for her clients, my seller can literally say no to that, that they do not approve of that, because they could say it's conflict of interest. So it's really good to specify, to explain this ahead of time and try and set their mind at ease, at least about that type of dual agency, and then explain it's also possible that I might have a buyer myself who's interested in your home, and explain to them that just because I represent, if I were to represent a buyer and you approve that, I still have a duty to you as the seller and a duty to my buyer to keep confidential information confidential. So the best way to describe it is, if my buyer says, hey, I love your listing, I want to write an offer, I want to offer full price at $350, but honestly, I'd go as high as $375 if I had to. What can I tell the seller? Well, I can tell the seller, hey, I've got an offer here for $350. I can't tell them that my buyer said I would go up to $375 if I have to. When you think about it that way, it makes sense. It's not very confusing. Essentially, you got to think like, okay, if I didn't represent the seller, what would I tell the seller as a buyer's agent, or the listing broker as buyer's agent? It's really the exact same thing. You just know more, and you can only share with the seller and only share with the buyer the information that the seller and buyer have given you permission to share. This does sound like a gray area. It really shouldn't be. So if this is confusing, talk to me. But again, if nothing else, just when you're having this initial conversation with your seller, just talk to them about dual agency being a very likely possibility, especially considering that someone else in our brokerage could be interested in the home. Just a reminder, in our independent contractor agreement that we all have, it says that if you are in the middle of a dual agency, or even considering a dual agency, you have to inform the brokerage. We don't charge any extra or anything like that. It's just so that I'm going to keep a closer eye on it, because again, I want to protect all of us, right? I don't want anyone to get sued. So that's really the point of that. So if there's ever a dual agency situation, just a quick email. Hey, just so you know, I got an offer from another broker in our office, or just so you know, I'm writing an offer on my own listing. Wanted to inform you this is going on, and I'm just going to keep an eye on it. Okay, second portion of this is the list date. This is important because the list date is oftentimes like, okay, let's shoot for listing this January. What is a first Thursday in January? I'm planning on listing this home January 7th. So as you know, if you've done a listing, that is often very tentative, right? They are like, yeah, we'll have all the painting done and the carpet done, and we'll be, moved out, or maybe whatever the case by then. And so let's shoot for January 7th. Well, what this says is the list date listed here has to be within 30 days of signing. Okay, so if somebody has, if you want to lock somebody in with a 1A ahead of time, you can't technically. You can, but you would have to put a date that's sooner than they want to list. But then you would have to essentially it expires after 30 days if you have not already listed the home. So if you say we're going to list on the 7th, and then all of a sudden they don't do it, and you have to list on the 14th of January. So then you need to send this back to the seller, cross out this list date, and do the new list date, and you're both going to initial the change. So just wanted to explain that portion. Commissions. This is something that is filled out incorrectly very, very often because it's kind of written a little confusingly, but really simply, the first percentage or number, almost everybody puts a percentage here. They don't put an actual commission amount, right? If you're listing a home for 400,000 and you want to list it for 5%, you're not going to put in $20,000, right? Because it could sell for more, it could sell for less. So you want to put in 5% here, but a lot of people go 2.5 here, and then they assume this is the selling office, and they go 2.5 here. Not to scare you, but I guess to scare you, what this means is that the total commission, it literally says the total commission is 2.5%, of which you will pay the cooperating member of the MLS, blah, 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 the selling agent, selling firm, 2.5%, which means you get nothing. So really read through this. If you have questions about it, let me know. The first number is the total commission, 5% or 6% or whatever you want it to be. And the second is what you are paying the selling office. So if you're taking 1%, this would be 3.5, and the selling office is making 2.5. It's pretty straightforward and simple, but again, I see this mistake, honestly, maybe 1 out of 10 listings, somebody fills it in wrong. Even like really experienced agents are just moving fast, and your gut reaction is just to fill that in 2.5. But anyways, just wanted to remind everyone that's really, really important. We've talked about distressed properties in the past, and it's such a long conversation. I'm going to be really short on this. If a seller is distressed, that means they are behind on taxes, they are behind on mortgage payments, etc. There are extra disclosures that need to be done, extra steps that have to be taken. Perhaps, Robin, you can find that past office meeting that we covered distressed properties. We covered it actually with Seth Goodstein, who's a real estate attorney who rents office space here. Maybe you can find that, include that with this video, because it is such an important issue. If in doubt, if you're talking to a seller that you think may qualify as a distressed seller, talk to me. It's really, really important, because that's an easy lawsuit. If you don't send the proper disclosures, a seller can easily sue you for not handling that properly. So it's really, really important to know if they are a distressed seller, if you have that knowledge, to go through the proper steps to cover that. Right now, it's not happening often, right? Most people have plenty of equity in their home. But as we hit the next bubble, whenever that is, this becomes much more common. And a lot of people think, well, it's not a short sale, so they're not a distressed seller. It's not the case. Okay, key boxes. This is just saying that you are going to put an MLS key box on the listing. Very simple. Seller warranties and representation. Seller warrants that the seller has the right to sell the property on terms herein, and the property information and listing sheets attached to and incorporated into this agreement is correct. This is essentially, it's a CYA clause. It's saying that as the listing broker, I only know what you're disclosing to me and what you're disclosing in the paperwork. You as a seller have a duty to be honest and to disclose everything honestly and accurately, but it's kind of covering my butt, saying I'm going to be repeating what you tell me. So you got to be honest to me. That's pretty much what it's saying. Seller shall furnish and pay for a buyer's policy of title insurance. That is standard. Title and escrow is going to handle that. They're going to pay half the escrow fee. That can be changed. That can be negotiated in a contract, but that is the standard, and that's what this is saying. This is all stuff that you want to know about, so that if your seller asks about it, you can briefly explain. But the good part about this clause here is this is all going to be handled by escrow. So essentially it's saying that rent, taxes, mortgage payments, it's all going to be prorated. So if you close on the 15th of December, you've paid, and obviously the seller has paid the whole year of taxes, he's going to be credited back 16 days worth of taxes, right? It's essentially just saying that everything's going to be prorated. It's saying that you, as a seller, by law, you're going to cover a basic title insurance policy and half the escrow fees, et cetera, et cetera. It's just kind of explaining this is what you're responsible for as the seller. Again, I'm going through this fast because most of this is kind of common sense. But if you guys want to pause me anytime and say, hey, can you elaborate on that? Let me know. Or if you want to schedule a separate meeting to talk to me about it, let me know. The truth is, I don't know what every single line of this whole 1A means to the T, and you don't have to. I mean, I probably can figure it out. We can all probably figure it out together. But you really just want to know the basics and really know what the seller is signing and what you're signing. So if the seller asks, which they often do, you can at least give them an idea. And if there's a certain term that you don't understand, that's fine. You can say, let me get back to you on that, but at least know what each header is for. MLS, this is just saying that you will be listing the home on the MLS. And this is also where it talks about pre-marketing right in there, which we've already talked about. Property condition and insurance, neither firm, MLS, nor any members of the MLS or any multiple listing service to which the listing is referred to shall be responsible for loss, theft, or damage of any nature or kind whatsoever to the property, any personal property therein, or any personal injury resulting from the condition of the property. This is like a hold harmless. This is saying that you are agreeing that I can list on the MLS. We're agreeing to certain showing directions. I'm not responsible. If someone damages the property or gets hurt on the property, that's still on you, Mr. Seller. So that's a risk you're taking in listing the property. Keep your valuables. This is a good, if this comes up, this is a good opportunity to talk to your seller and say, if you have really important, valuable items, lock them up, have them somewhere safe. But I'm not responsible if somebody else does something to your property while the property is listed. Firm's right to market the property, really self-explanatory. It's just saying that we're going to market the property as best we can. In the event of a breach of the foregoing. Yeah, it's really just saying that you're going to be marketing the property. One important, I was reading because I think in this clause right here, it talks about, this is another important thing to point out to your clients, especially if they're kind of skittish and they're like, I'm still hesitating. You can remind them that the 1A is a marketing agreement. They are agreeing to allow you to market a property. If you list a property for $400,000, you get an offer for $1 million. You as a seller do not have to sign off on it. That's obviously a ridiculous example. Most of them will, probably all of them will, but just remind them that this is an agreement to market the property. And if we get into a purchase and sale agreement, then you really are locked in as a seller. And then you do owe me this commission and you do owe the selling brokerage this commission, but you do not have to sign any offer that comes across that I submit to you. You are just giving me permission to market the property. Seller disclosure, this we're going to get into a little bit later, but this is saying unless seller is exempt under RCW 6406, which I will explain in just a second, seller shall provide as soon as reasonably practicable. Practicable? Is that it? That practicable? Doesn't sound right when I'm saying it. A completed and signed Form 17 seller disclosure, or the 17C if it's vacant land. And this is literally an RCW. It's not an MLS rule. This is a Washington state law, and I believe it's a law in all states that the seller must list a property with a form 17, a seller disclosure. So we're going to talk about that a little more in just a second. Damages in the event of a buyer's breach. In the event seller retains earnest money as liquidated damages on a buyer's breach, any costs advanced or committed by firm on seller's behalf shall be paid therefrom, and the balance divided equally between the seller and firm. This is something a lot of people don't know, but technically, if a buyer backs out of a contract for a reason other than what they have a contingency in place for, and thus they lose their earnest money, technically the firm / you are entitled to a portion of the earnest money to cover costs that you have. 9 out of 10 brokers, maybe even more than that, will not ask for that, because you're essentially, I mean, if we can use a hypothetical example, this happens and your seller's all upset because they're a week from closing, and now you've got $5,000 in earnest money, but they still need to sell it. I'm always going to give my seller the $5,000 because I'm still going to make my commission when it closes. It would be a bad look, in my opinion, for you to say, well, I've spent like 20 hours on this, so I want my commission plus $1,000 of the $5,000 earnest money. Technically, you have the right to do that. I wouldn't encourage it. That's a pretty good way to get a seller to cancel their listing with you. Tripping over a penny to get to a dime, as Craig would say. Anyways, it's something a lot of people don't know that we have the right to do. Attorney fees in the event either party employs an attorney to enforce any terms of this agreement and is successful, the other party agrees to pay reasonable attorney fees. This is really just it's an agreement to split the attorney fees in that circumstance. This is lastly, line 105, are the undersigned the sole owners? I don't know why, but for some reason, this is more like 1 out of 5 listing agreements I see. People forget to check this box. For a valid 1A, you need the whole thing filled out. And this is just really simple. If the seller is part of, if the seller is one of multiple sellers, only one seller is signing this, then you're going to check no. But most of the time, you're getting all the seller's initial signatures here, and so the answer will be yes. But just a reminder to fill it out. Okay, that's a 1A. I went really fast on that. Again, there's so much in there. I really encourage you to read through it, and you read through the forms manual too. It's not that big of a document. It's really informative, and there's a lot of things in there that I bet you don't know. So moving on. This is the listing input, the form 1. Again, this is a form that there's different forms if it's a multifamily or manufactured home or a condo, et cetera. But they all look really similar. They just have slightly different things, because selling those type of properties there's different things involved. So we're just going to cover the form 1 today. But obviously, if you are filling out one of the other listing input forms for a different type of property, feel free to call me and we can discuss it in further depth. This form is pretty straightforward. We're gonna rush through it. It's step 1 is the address. Step 2 is the listing price. Again, this is tentative, right? If you're agreeing to list a property at $350 and they do a lot of repairs, and in 20 days from now, we see a bunch of other comps that we're like, wow, dang, we could probably sell this for $375. That's fine. Then just cross this out and have them sign initial where it says $375. But do note that, when you're inputting this information, if you make a change here and you're changing it on the MLS, you do technically have to get it changed here. Or there's also something called the Form 19, which allows you to make a change to the input sheet. So you can either make changes on here and have them initial it, or you can go in here and say, we're changing the price, or we're reducing the price, we're increasing the price, whatever the case. Anyways, those are kind of 2 options, but just make sure if you are making a change from when they originally sign it, get it initialed and changed. Don't just get a phone call that says, hey, I want to raise the price to $375. Get that in writing, right? Trying to decide how much detail I want to go into. I'm going to go into a little more detail here. Expiration date. Expiration date is kind of a moot point. I generally, you ask the seller, what do you want the expiration date to be? But I tell my sellers, hey, here's the deal. The expiration date, I don't really care what it is, because the truth is, if you're not happy with me after 1 week, and we have a expiration date of 2 years from now, I'm going to let you out of the contract, because I don't want you. because again, I just have a right to market your property, and you don't have to sign any offer that comes in. So it makes no sense to hold someone to an expiration date. So I always tell clients, it really doesn't matter. My goal is to sell this property the first weekend, right? If it doesn't sell and you're not happy with me, then we'll cancel the listing. So if you'd prefer to have the expiration date as 2 weeks from now, that's fine. It's kind of, it's a tough issue. You know, generally I put like 6 months there, but the expiration date kind of doesn't matter too much if they're pricing it right and, you know, they're motivated sellers. It's just something to think about. Tax ID, make sure you put the tax ID in correctly. So this would be a big mistake if you have the incorrect tax ID, because you could be marketing a property that you do not have the right to market. So that would be a huge blunder. It's pretty simple to do. Just make sure you double, triple check that. Was preliminary titled order? That's ordered. That's just when you call the title company, whatever title and escrow company you want to use, and you say, hey, I'm ordering title for this property. For newer agents who haven't had a listing before, generally the buyer has a right to choose escrow, but in a seller's market like this, generally the seller dictates that. Though the buyer can change that if they want, but then the seller can say no to them suggesting a change. So essentially what you do is, before you list a property, you call Fidelity Title, WFG, First American, whatever the case, and you say, hey, I want to order title for this property. They send you the legal description and the title report. And then you upload that as a supplement to the listing.
Isaac, can I add something?
Absolutely.
It's also totally legit, 100% okay to have title handled by one company and escrow handled by a different company.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because there's two different fees. The buyer and seller pay title, and the buyer and seller pay escrow. Oftentimes, I would say, like most of the time, it's one company, but that's fine. If there's, you see it oftentimes where, like, I'm listing a property and an investor wants to write an offer, and the investor gets a special deal from a certain escrow company, and they say, hey, here's a great offer, but we're doing my company for escrow. Not my company literally, but the company I'm choosing. So it is negotiable, but generally sellers put it in a hot market. As a buyer's agent, I'm not going to counter that, because I don't really, I don't want to miss out on an offer because of that. Thank you. Just got a big package in the office. Okay. Seller intends to review offers upon receipt or on offer review date. In a hot market, I like to do an offer review date. This is not a rule. This is just my opinion. There's not a lot of listings out there, right? There's a lot more buyers, and I don't want the first buyer who goes through on a Thursday to write an offer on Thursday for, you know, list price. And, you know, I want to let people know ahead of time, we're probably not accepting an offer on the first day, because I want as many buyers to get through as possible, so I can get as many offers as possible, so I can get the highest possible offer for my seller as possible. I just use the word possible a lot there. But the point is, in a hot market, it makes a lot of sense to have an offer review date, because it kind of stirs up a sense of urgency, and it lets people know ahead of time, like, I'm not accepting an offer the day I list it. We're going to wait at least until Sunday, or I'd say normally Monday, to review offers. So then we get as many possible offers as possible and get the highest possible for our seller. FROPTA withholding required. Is your seller a foreign citizen? We're going to, in just a second, talk about the Form 22E, where the seller will disclose, are they a foreign citizen or not. Generally, I haven't worked with someone who is not, who is a foreign citizen. But generally how it works is, if a seller is not a U.S. citizen, then you have to disclose that ahead of time, because the seller pays extra taxes, and a lot of people don't know this, but the buyer pays extra taxes that they have to pay. I'm not even sure if it's actually taxes, but they have extra fees. Excuse my terminology. If the seller is a foreign citizen, so that's why you have to disclose it ahead of time. There's a lot there on this form. The ones that have a black dot, you have to input. You have to put something there. The items that do not have a black dot, you do not have to input. This is where you can actually, like, map exactly where the property is. In my opinion, it takes time and effort to get this information in there, and who cares? Anybody can Google it and see exactly where it's at. That's just my opinion. Maybe that's lazy, but this is you can look up this information and put it here, so I guess somebody can pull up a paper map and figure out where the property is. Honestly, I never fill this out, and I've never had a client ask me to, but that's what that's there for. Property information. Okay, prohibit blogging, yes or no? That's saying, if you say yes, prohibit blogging, that's saying that somebody has to get your permission to share your listing. If you say, I'm sorry, yes, if you say no, then anybody can share your listing without your permission. Allow automated valuation. I'm gonna be honest, I actually don't know what that is. Sarah, do you have any idea what that is?
I'm sorry, I will confess I was looking at something else. What are we talking about?
This one right here, allow automated valuation. I actually don't know what that is.
I think that would be the MLS has the ability to tell you what they think your property's worth. So I think that that's where that would come in.
Where does
It's
that
like
show
an
up?
estimate.
Yeah, like a CMA kind of.
Where does that show up? If I say allow automated valuation, I say yes. Where is that public? I've never seen that from the MLS.
I'm not going to test it, so I don't know.
My sort of guess is that all of the Northwest multiple IDX feeds that are owned by like the different offices around the Puget Sound, I imagine they probably have add-ons to their website that can sort of give you the value of the property or not. And so I'm imagining it's just cutting off that chunk of information so that if Hawkins Poe shared one of our listings, they wouldn't be able to say list price, actual value or something.
Okay, here it is. Automated valuation estimate the fair market value of the property. If the seller chooses to allow AVMs to be displayed on the seller's listing, select yes to allow AVMs. If yes is selected, then members and subscribers may display AVMs on the public website that estimate the value of the seller's property. That's really interesting to me because like Zillow and Redfin do that automatically. So this is a good example that I don't know everything, and you don't have to know everything. That's a hard one to explain to a seller. To me, my gut reaction is I don't really see harm in saying yes, sellers can. I mean, other companies can show automated valuation. Any publicity is good publicity, but that's me talking really quick without thinking too much about it. Point of the story is I don't have all the answers, and I'm going to try and get more information on this and talk about this in a later meeting. Show map link, that's a yes. That's just saying that they can show where on the map this is. That's obvious. You definitely want to do that. Internet advertising, this is the seller saying that you have the right to advertise it on the internet. That's an obvious yes because the MLS is on the internet. And show address to the public. Again, obviously you want the seller to select yes on that. Selling office commission, this is just the selling office. This is not your office. This is not the listing office because the listing office commission is actually private. Only the listing office, you, the listing broker, and the seller have to know that. Nobody else has to know that. I guess escrow will have to know that upon closing. So this would be, whatever you have the selling office commission be. Selling office commission comments can be anything. This is going to get really into the weeds, so I'm just going to briefly say this. If you are representing a builder, there are often times that you're going to say, you can, actually, let's take that out of this. You can have comments such as must, oh my gosh. You can have comments that say the selling broker to earn a commission has to show the property to the buyer. Meaning if your buyer calls me and says, hey, I want to see your listing, and you show it, and then they say, oh, I have an agreement with another agent, which is not terribly uncommon. You can technically put in here, well, sorry, agent, you don't get a commission because you didn't show the property to the buyer the first time. That's really complicated, and there's a lot to that. So I'm not going to elaborate on that too much. Sarah, what's another example of like something more common that you see here? Like I see like equal split sometimes, right? Like maybe it's a 2% commission here. And so buyer's agents are going to go, man, 2%, that's kind of low. So you might go equal split, or say, oops, it's not letting me change that. listing office commission 1%. And the point in saying that is to let the broker know, you're essentially letting the broker know, hey, so I'm in the same boat as you. This is what the seller dictated. So I apologize. You know, I see that often. You don't have to have the selling office commission comments filled out. It's optional, but it's just something to think about. That's kind of what it's there for. Sarah, what were you going to say?
Something I've seen there is if you have some sort of, sometimes brokers will have a deal with their escrow company where they provide a free, what you calls it, home warranty. So, you know, you might put something like that, like as an incentive to say, we're also going to give this to your client.
Yep. That's actually a good one. I also have seen someone say 3% if full price offer. I gotta think about that one though. I've seen it before, but now I'm saying it out loud. I don't know if you can do that unless you have something signed by the seller saying that, but I guess they're signing this. I don't know. Let me talk to me about that if you have questions.
I've seen that too. So
yeah.
you're not.
I guess if you're doing that, just make sure the seller's signing it right here, and maybe even initial that. Okay, I'm going to try and speed this up. Year built is obvious. Effective year built, oftentimes on older homes, there was a major remodel, in which case you can look that up. I'm actually going to show you really quick how you can look that up. Okay, give me an address. Andrew, you got what's an address? What's your rental?
You got an address for
Muted. 1917 South L.
1917 South L Street. Okay, so you're listing Andrew's property. He's kind of cheap, so he's probably only going to pay you like 1%. So you look up his property here, you click right here on the tax ID. By the way, this is how you get the tax ID. You can copy and paste it, but just double, triple check that you copied and pasted it correctly. I know I talked about that earlier. Okay, so I click on this hyperlink right here and it takes me to the assessor treasurer. You click over here on building, and then it's going to say year built and adjusted year built, 1984. That's how you figure it out. Long story short, it's something that's on record, and it's essentially saying that at that point there was a big remodel of some sort. Or it's a little confusing. Sarah, do you have anything to add on that? I always actually have trouble explaining exactly what that is. My understanding is it's really just it's at that time there was a big remodel of some sort that was documented, and so it's like an adjusted year built. Am I saying that right, Sarah?
Yeah, that's all it is. It just means that it's updated, and I have actually looked this up for when you're putting in the year built as far as keeping records, or like whether you need to do a 22J. It's always best to go with the older year, even though sometimes the effective year built is a way of making it so you don't really need that 22J anymore if it's past that time. But yeah, for the most part, it's just to say, hey, we made the house nicer and it's newer.
Yep.
It's also for tax purposes.
Yep.
Yeah.
I will say I'm not saying you're wrong, Sarah. I have never heard that about the 22J. So just getting that really quick. 22J is lead-based paint disclosure. You have to disclose if your home is older than 1978. You have to disclose if you know of lead-based paint. I haven't heard that an effective year built trumps that. I'll have to get back to you on that. Sarah saying maybe that is the case, but Sarah also said that if in doubt, why not include the 22J? Because let's be honest, I haven't, no seller really knows if there's lead-based paint in their home, and they almost always fill it out as I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, and just to clarify, that's what I was saying, is you should always go with the oldest year.
Yeah, no, I know you said
Okay.
that. Interesting question though. Okay, total square feet. This is really important. Square feet is including finished square footage. It does not have to be what's on record. That's important to know. If there's a home with a basement that the seller had previously, before selling it, had finished the basement and tax record doesn't show that, you can figure out what the square footage is. And market it as such. But essentially what you just want to explain, I'm getting ahead of myself, but here in the broker remarks, you would explain something like ASF does not reflect public record due to newly finished basement, something to that effect. Common question, does a garage count as square footage? And it does not, period. So no on the garage. I wanted to go here really quick. As you guys saw, I looked at this, I looked up AVM. This is saying everything that I've already said and more. So again, this is a forms manual on the Form 1, and it literally covers everything we've talked about. So if you have any questions about any of this, look up the forms manual. It's so helpful. Lot size, square footage. Again, it's all public record. Lot size source, this is where you'd write public record, right? Virtual tour, if you have a virtual tour, you can post it here and you can explain Matterport, or you can say listing video, whatever you want to say. Important reminder when you're listing something on the MLS, whether it's pictures or virtual tours or anything like that, make sure that there's no marketing on those. Because when you're listing on the MLS, it cannot be marketing yourself as a listing broker more than it already is by saying you are the listing broker. So all your pictures and any virtual tours have to be non-branded. Now, if you do have a branded video, you can still post on Facebook and on your website and all that. But when you post them to the MLS, make sure the video or the Matterport or anything like that does not say Realty One Group or your name or anything like that. Really, really important. That's I believe it's an automatic fine. I actually I don't think they give you a warning on that one because it's such a big deal. And the reason for that, just really quick, is you don't they want to get fair playing field, right? They want people to be who look at a listing to be able to call their agent and not think, oh, I have to call the listing broker on this, right? It's a fair playing field and it works for you as a buyer's agent.
Yeah, can I tell you that my first year in the business and with my first listing, MLS called me on the carpet because I had my main picture of the house had my sign in it, and I was not aware at the time that that was a no-no. So they're pretty strict about that. I mean, I avoided the fine because I took the picture down, but
okay, so you did avoid the fine. That's good to know. Okay, so yeah,
yes.
People make mistakes. I mean, obviously that was a mistake. I've seen that a lot, where someone posts the front picture of the home and you already had to sign up, and you're like, oh, I wasn't even thinking about marketing myself. It just was. That's how the picture turned out. Anyway, it's just something to think about.
I've definitely called 2 brokers this year about that exact thing.
Yep, it's really, really an easy thing to make a mistake on, but that's good to know that they don't fine you automatically. Just think about it. If you're selling the home and the lot next door to it or something like that, you can add additional tax IDs here. Lag number, this is where you're going to put your lag number, your name, your phone number, the listing firm ID, which is 7629. You can look that up on the MLS if you ever forget that. Though I think we have all of our transaction templates automatically input, and then firm name and firm phone number. If you are a co-broker on this, then you'll want to include, if there is a co-broker on this, you'll want to include them here. And by the way, if you have a co-listing broker, that does not necessarily mean that they are entitled to half the commission or any portion of the commission. For example, having worked for Craig, Craig Tuttle, the owner, he would oftentimes, when I first started out, have me as a co-listing broker on his listings when he was like going on vacation, and I'd just help him out because I was his employee, and I wouldn't be entitled to any commission. Just so you know, that's between you and whoever your co-listing broker is. It's not an automatic, well, they get half the commission, just so you know. It's all whatever you guys agree to. CC&Rs, this is all talking about if there's an HOA, you'd put the association's contact name and their phone number. You should be able to get that from title. And if they don't have it, they should have that information. Your seller should have that information as well. Possession is on closing, negotiable, see remarks, subject to tenant's rights. That's pretty self-explanatory, but if like there is a tenant in there who has a lease through the end of May, you're going to say subject to tenant rights and see remarks, because obviously if they have a lease through the end of May, you can't say possessions on closing because the buyer can't possess the can't move into the property until the tenant tenant rights supersede buyer's rights in that circumstance. Showing information, this is where you want to check all that apply. So currently right now during COVID times, every showing has to be an appointment technically. So even if it's vacant, you do that. But in the past, generally you could just go vacant if it was vacant, and that just means vacant in MLS key box, and that just means go ahead and show whenever you want. But nowadays you want to go MLS key box, vacant or not vacant, showing time. If you use showing time, I highly suggest you use showing time. Really quick, showing time is a free service, not free, included service provided by the MLS. It's a third party that when you list a property, you can set up showing time where people have to schedule there. You can set it up so if your clients live in the home, it sends, if somebody tries to schedule, it sends them a message so that they can say yes or no, or suggest a different time, and then you're not involved, which is super nice in a hot market like this. You do not want to be playing telephone, quite literally, where someone says, hey, I want to show the home at 5. You say, okay, let me call you right back. And call the seller and they say yes. And you call them back, you say yes. And they say, oh, never mind. That sounds horrible. Use showing time. If you have questions about showing time, talk to Sarah, Andrew, or myself. We've all set up showing time a bajillion times, and it's pretty straightforward. Other good things in here, like let them know if there's a pet in the house, anything like that. Security system, all that fun stuff. Potential terms. This is where you want, to the best of your ability, disclose if you think we're not lenders, we're not appraisers, we don't know for sure, but if you're pretty dang certain that it's not going to go VA because of condition, right? There's broken windows that they're not going to replace. The roof looks like there's carpet all over it and it's just moss. Then you don't want to check VA, right? But I will say, we're not lenders, we're not appraisers. You don't have to know this for a fact. You want to be careful, right? But anyways, check all that apply. If in doubt, don't check it or talk to me before you do it. You don't want to say something like USDA if you're not certain that it is USDA, right? That's really simple. You can look up areas. You can look up where are USDA loans applicable in Pierce County, and you can actually see a map and see if it is possible to go USDA. Whereas VA, it's not like you can take a picture of the roof and Google that online and say, hey, will this go VA? Of course you can't do that, right? So that's more subjective. USDA is objective. Does that make sense? So in general, you just want to go cash out, and all the other ones that apply. Obviously, cash out is always going to be applicable. Homeowners dues include, again, if there is a homeowners association, you want to check all that apply. Monthly homeowner dues, this is a dollar amount. Monthly rent, if the property is rented, you'll put a dollar amount. Senior exempt, this is when a senior lives in a property. They are often, their taxes are less. And so if it is a senior and you're looking at the taxes and it's like $900 a year, you're like, yeah, it's definitely senior exempt. Anyways, that would be yes or no. Right of first refusal. This is if on title, this is so rare. On title, someone can have agreed to give somebody first right of refusal if they ever want to sell a property. So that means I have a property and Andrew has first right of refusal on title. That is saying that if I ever go to sell a property and somebody offers me $800, I am required by law to go to Andrew and say, hey, Andrew, this person offered me $800. Do you want to buy it for $800? If not, then I will sell it to them. We'll move on. That never happens. I haven't sold a property like that. I'm sure there are cases. Tax year, this is, you're going to, when you look at Andrew's property that you're selling, you're going to see, okay, this is how much taxes are, and it's 2020. And if you're selling a property in January, what you want to do is you still want to take the 3626 because you won't know what the new taxes are for 2021. But in that case, you're going to put here 2020 for the tax year. Does that make sense? Because we don't know what 2021 taxes are. So it's generally new taxes are become public record around March, sometimes April. So anyways, that's what that means. So January, February, or March, you're probably going to have the previous year here and the previous year's taxes because you don't know what the new taxes are. Form 17, this is exempt, not provided, provided. I'm going to talk about those in a minute. Common interest community, this is CC&Rs, yes or no? HOA is another term. School district, this is a black dot. You have to put in what district it is. You do not need to have the elementary, junior high, and senior high school. In general, if you are not certain, don't put it in. But if you do know, put it in.
You can also choose buyer to verify.
Love that. Yep. Buyer to verify. I love that. I do get this question probably once a month from agents in our office. Do you have a good website for searching what schools are for what homes? And the answer is no, I do not. That's it. I've looked all over. There's like all the school district websites and all that. They like, it's so vague. They don't like say, yeah, this street, like divide. It's so confusing. It's really confusing. So I have never found a website that like tells you definitively, at least here in Pierce County, this neighborhood is in this exact elementary school. So anyways, if you find something like that, I'm just going to make a proclamation. $25 Amazon gift card to anybody who finds that and can provide that to our office.
You can just call the district and have them send you the map of whatever city you're in.
Well, I've seen the map, and it's not exactly clear though. I've seen,
okay.
Yeah, it's not street by street. It's saying like, so it'll say like this area is covered by these three elementary schools. But does that make sense? It's confusing. Anyways, someone has an easier way of knowing for darn certain, let me know, and I'll get you a $25 gift card. Owner's name, that's pretty self-explanatory. If there's a second owner, you put it here. You don't have to do anything special here. You're just, oh my gosh, I hate when that happens. You're just going on Realist and you're just writing down exactly what it says right at the very top. Andrew, Meyer, Andrea, and I'm sorry, I'm not gonna even try and say her last name. I'd just embarrass myself.
Augusto Italiano.
Good for you, Robin. You show off.
That's what I call her because I don't know how to say it either.
Owner's phone number. You'll notice this is a black dot. You have to include the owner's phone number, but I'm going to say if you don't want to include the owner's phone number / the owner doesn't want his phone number being public, you can use a Form 7B. Oh, I'm not the forms. Anyways, it's a Form 7B. It's really self-explanatory, and you can exclude the seller's name and phone number if you would like, / if they would like. And in which case, though, you can't leave it blank. You still have to go, oops, you still have to type out zeros. Or if you don't, then when you're trying to upload this to MLS, it's going to say, hey, you left a black dot blank, essentially. Anyways, that's that. Occupant type. This is where you're going to say vacant, tenant, owner, pre-sale. Phone to show, this is if you require selling brokers to call a number before they show the home, you'd put that there. Most of the time, if you're using showing time or something like that, this is also going to be zeros across the board because I don't want them calling me before they show the home. Just go show the home, especially because, most listings, you've got like 40 showings a week. It's ridiculous. So it's like, yeah, I encourage you to keep that as zeros. Again, unless it's like a tenant who says, no, I'm not using showing time. I want you to call me. Everyone has to call me to schedule an appointment. Okay, perfect. Then put the tenant or the owner's phone number in there. Owner, city, and state. This is just where does the owner live? Doesn't have to be it's not an address, just a city and state. Gig Harbor, Washington. Occupant's name. This is where you can just say the owner's name or the tenant's name or vacant. Again, it's a black dot, so you have to type something in here. Is it bank owned? Generally, it's a no, but if it is, you'd select yes. Third party approval. Again, this would be if like they're going through a short sale or something and the bank has to approve it. Is it currently a property that's going to auction? Yes or no? No, yes, whatever. Lot dimensions. This is something that you can look up really quick by going on Realist and clicking on the lot dimensions, but it's not a black dot. You don't have to have it. Waterfront, water footage, no black dots, so you don't have to fill that out. Obviously, if it's not applicable, same with pool. Zoning code, you can also get from Realist, but you don't have to. Zoning jurisdiction. Again, just fill out what you feel comfortable filling out. If you want to be really thorough and fill out every single box, then you can find all this information on public record. When I go to a listing appointment, I like to, I've filled out enough listing inputs that I know these, but just something to read before you go to a listing appointment so that you can take notes by hand or on your phone about these type of things. But you know, if there's garden space, you put that there. Oh, fruit trees, I'm going to mark that. Anything like that. Is there a view? If so, what's the view of? Is it a partial view? Or if it's just a great view, then you don't select partial. Waterfront, just leave it blank if there's no waterfront. Lot details, corner lot, curbs. This is all really self-explanatory. Sewer connected? Is sewer available? Is it connected? No sewer, or is it septic? This is all really self-explanatory, so I'm just going to move fast. Basement. These terms are not subjective; they are objective terms. If you have questions about these, let me know. But it is pretty self-explanatory. Same with the parking type. Approved number of bedrooms is only talking about if it's a septic. Septics are approved for a certain amount of bedrooms. So that's that. Total covered parking. That can be garages or carports. It's just covered. If the home is being built or it's a new construction, you want to put the builder's name here because the builder isn't always the seller. New construction, yes or no. Black dot, so you have to fill it in. And then again, these are just if it's being built right there. Architecture, building code, and style code, those are all optional. Well, style code is not optional. This is one that you do have to put in. If you have questions about these different codes, let me know. But these you don't have to put in, like building condition. I generally don't put it in because if someone's only searching for, if you leave it blank, then anyone who's searching for any certain category will see it. If you select that it's a good condition home and someone's only looking for remodeled, they're not going to see it, right? So I just leave it blank. That's my opinion. If it's manufactured home, you'd put the serial number here, and the manufactured home manufacturer, if you know it here, always include the serial number. That's on the side of manufactured home. You don't need to have that. The manufacturer if you don't know it. This is a good point. This is a good time to point out. It seems like I'm contradicting myself because earlier I said there's a listing input for manufactured home. So the separate listing input for manufactured home is for manufactured homes that are in a mobile home park where you pay rent to be in the park and you own the home. So you're just selling the structure, but you're not selling the real estate. So you would, if you're selling a lot that has a manufactured home on it, you're still going to use the Form 1. Hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, talk to me. Exterior, it should be pretty self-explanatory. If you have questions about this, let me know. But you're just looking, is it vinyl? Is it stucco? Is it wood? Whatever the case. Sometimes it's the mixture of both. Same with foundation. If you have questions, let me know. Sometimes I gloss over these things and you're like, well, how do I know if it's slab or if it's poured concrete or whatever? It's there's a lot to it, and it's not like an easy, oh, we know this if it's this. So if in doubt, call me and I'm happy to walk you through that. Most roofs are composition, but same thing. If you have questions, just let me know. This is a new one they added. Home faces north, south, east, west. I don't know why that matters, but there's a place to put it if you want to figure that out. And again, all this is pretty self-explanatory. Accessibility features, this is if it has like a ramp up to the home, anything like that. Is there an accessory dwelling unit? If so, how many bedrooms and bathrooms and how many square feet in the accessory dwelling unit? That's like an extra unit on the property. You got the main home and you've got an extra unit. If there are things like high efficiency furnace or anything, or solar panels or anything, that's where you put it right here. Finished square foot, unfinished square footage. Okay, so Sarah, I don't know why I always struggle on this. Okay, finished square foot is self-explanatory. There's parts of your home that are finished and parts that oftentimes aren't. Like you maybe have a basement that is, 1,000 square feet unfinished. In which case you want to specify that the total square footage is 2,000 square feet of the home, and that was that front page. But the bottom square foot, only 1,000 of it is finished. Unfinished is 1,000. Does that make sense? Did I say that right, Sarah?
Yeah, that's how it works. Sometimes people include the garage that way too. Perfect.
Yes. Sorry, I was distracted for a second. I don't think you can include the garage. I'm gonna get back to you guys on that. I'm pretty sure the MLS says that you can't. Sorry to contradict you, and if I'm wrong, I apologize. Maybe we can get back to everyone on that one. I'm pretty sure the garage is totally separate, and you're not supposed to put that in unfinished square footage. So we'll get back to you guys on that. Square footage source, you're just saying public record there, or realist, or whatever you want to say. Fireplaces, what type of fireplaces? Water heater type, water heater location. This is another thing that, like, when I'm going through the home the first time, I'm writing these things down. As you know, the listing input, you'll know these questions I'm going to have to know. So it's nice to write them down as you're walking through the home the first time. So you're not calling the the seller when you're sending them the paperwork and like, hey, can you remind me what kind of water heater it is and where it's located and so on. Same with these, you kind of want to know these questions. They're all really, is there a second kitchen? Is there a second master bathroom? You want to look for these as you're going through the home before you've done the paperwork, so that ideally you can fill out all the paperwork without talking to your seller because you already know all this. Great question to ask your seller when you're getting closer to listing the property. What appliances are included? This is talking about the community that it's in. So is there an age restriction? Is there a boat launch included? CCNRs, which is redundant because they already asked us earlier. What's the water source? Is it community, shared well, private, public? Irrigation comments. This is where you put in the company, TPU, right, or anything like that. Really pretty self-explanatory. Public transit, this one cracks me up. Is it nearby? Nearby is, talk about subjective. I almost always say yes, unless it's like super rural. It's like, yeah, there's a bus 5 miles away. But however you want to fill that one out, and then you can't put the route there. Again, no black dot. If you don't know it, you don't need to put it in. This is, there's a coding up here, how to fill this out. So each thing that is applicable, you'll just want to use this coding. So bonus room, you're going to upper, right? Upper, main, lower, split. If it's a split level, that's where you'd put like split for the entry, right? I'm not going to spend too much time on that. Hopefully that all makes sense. One really common mistake that people make is they will say, number of bedrooms. There's 4 upstairs and none on the main and none on the lower, or 1 in the basement. Okay, the 4 upstairs, 1 of them is a master, and you also put this here. So if you did that, if you put a master on the upper and you put 4 on the upper, it's redundant, and so it's going to show on the MLS as 6 bedrooms when in reality there's 4 upstairs and 1 downstairs, and the 4 upstairs includes a master. Does that make sense? So you want to put that as 3 plus a master plus 1 on the lower. And then bathrooms is pretty self-explanatory. Marketing remarks, there's no easy button. Just get your creative energy flowing. Don't hesitate to ask somebody to proof it. And the best piece of advice I give new agents when they're writing marketing remarks for the first time is go read a bunch of marketing remarks from other agents and see what you like, what looks good to you. Confidential broker remarks only. This is just for...
Isaac, can I chime in something about broker remarks, because it's so very important?
Yeah.
So this is where you have to be really careful to make sure that you're not violating, I can't even think of equal opportunity housing. So you cannot put anything that says walk. You cannot put anything that implies children.
Family is a weird one.
Yeah, you can't say family. You can't say...
You can say family room, but that's it. You can't talk about a family in the house.
You can't say she shed, apparently.
You can't say
about like a couple, like perfect little cottage for newlyweds. You can't say anything like that. So nothing that implies age, nothing that implies race, nothing that implies gender, and nothing that implies
disability.
And Robin, putting you on the spot, Robin's going to include in the recap email a list of things you can't say from the MLS. And you can look it up if you ever are having trouble finding it.
It's in our agent resources folder, and it's also in our ROGTK brokers group on Facebook.
It'll make you feel like you can't say anything, but you can.
The only thing that I see our brokers get tripped up on pretty bad is when a house is partially converted to help someone who's either got a developing handicap or a handicap that maybe their house isn't up to ADA standards or something. So like, even if there's bars in the shower, there's a ramp up to the front porch, unless all of the doorways are 3 feet wide and it's got ADA approval, that you can't market that house as being set up for a handicapped buyer. It's a little strange, but another strange one that I got, one of my brokers got caught on a few years ago. There was this huge custom made Oriental rug that fit the living room just perfect. And it actually ended up conveying with the property. And so they had written that Oriental rug in the marketing remarks, and it came up as a violation of the terms.
Gosh, there's so many things I want to say, but this is being recorded. So.
If you have questions, feel free to reach out to us, and Sarah and I, Bleeding Hearts, will make sure that no one's feelings can be hurt and there's no discrimination.
I also say, don't think about it.
100%.
Don't even read the remarks. Don't even read the don't say words until you write it, because it's going to be in your head and you're going to have like writer's block. Write your marketing remarks and then take it out and be like, did I say anything I can't say? Perfect. Because most likely you're going to write it and you're not going to say anything wrong. But if you like have this list of things you can't say, you're going to be like, oh my God, like, how do I write anything? It's really not that hard. And most of the things you're not going to say. The big ones you see are like man cave or something like that, where it's like totally innocent. You don't think about it, but it's like sexist. So
I know. I should have said they said.
Walking distance is the one I see the absolute most.
Yeah, walking distance is rough. You can say within minutes of, and then talk about, like, I don't know, if they evaporate and acquiesce there, if they hoverboard there, if they float there, if they drive there. You can say minutes away from stuff, but you can't say within walking distance. It's considered ableist.
you know what else they cut out? They cut out, you can't say anymore his and hers for closets, because that's
You can still say Jack and Jill.
which is so weird.
Can
That's
you?
can't say
I thought
his
you
and
couldn't
hers.
say Jack and Jill anymore.
You can still technically say Jack and Jill, but I have a feeling that one's going to get pulled soon too. So it's just better to say dual sinks, dual.
oh, this is my favorite.
Double closet.
Yeah, this is my favorite. 2 closets for all
2
y'all.
people or 1 person.
So ridiculous.
Live your life. Just please buy a house. That's all I care about.
Yeah. I'm just gonna, yep. So confidential broker remarks. Let's talk about what should be in there. This is where you would put confidential information, as it says, and things that maybe you don't want the public to know, or maybe the public doesn't need to know. So stuff that obviously the public doesn't need to know about and shouldn't know about are things like owners are away from Friday through Monday, so easy showing those 4 days. Obviously, you're not going to put that in the marketing remarks, because now any thief or anyone can go see that on Zillow, and now they're like, oh, beautiful. You know what I mean? So that's where you put that in the confidential remarks. You'd also put maybe the security system code, though a lot of people would say no. Please text the agent for that. This is also where you want to put information for the title and escrow company that the seller prefers. You'd put information like any kind of showing directions that you want to elaborate on, like you can show anytime between 9 and 5, and then between 5 and 8 p.m., please call the phone to show, PTS, right? That's where you put all that information in there. That's information that's not necessarily confidential, but it's more just like, it shouldn't be in the marketing remarks, because it's not about marketing. It's more just logistics. Driving directions is one of the funniest things on this entire form that I don't know why we still need. No, I mean, there is no broker.
It's just outdated.
Actually, like, prints out the driving directions.
You don't need to open your Thomas book to try and figure out where the listing is that you're going to show anymore.
You can silly. I honestly can't believe we still have that. But you can seriously just say, from this street, turn left, from this street, turn right, and homes on the left. Whatever you want to say. If in doubt, look at what other listings are doing. Okay, that form took way longer than I expected. I'm going to zoom through the other ones, which is easy because it's really not difficult. So when you list a property to the MLS, which I'm not going to get into today, because if you're a new agent who doesn't know how to do that, I'm going to be helping you through the listing process anyway, so we'll talk about that then. But when you do that, you're going to upload supplements, and these are the supplements generally that you should be adding. At a minimum, you have to, according to MLS, have to upload the legal description, which is what you're going to get from the title company. So you have to upload that from day one. You do not have to upload anything else except the 7B. You have to upload that's the one that's saying seller information undisclosed. That's this form right here. If you are not disclosing the seller's phone number and or name, you have to upload this as a supplement. A lot of people are like, well, why am I going to upload this as a supplement? If all the brokers are going to see it, then it's already there. It's when you upload it as a supplement, the only people who can see it is you, your brokerage, which is me only, not other agents in our brokerage, and the MLS. So anyways, it's uploaded and it shows that it's uploaded, but anybody, if they click on it, they won't be able to see it. Whereas all the other supplements that you add, people will be able to see. The other forms that you should include, in my opinion, but I'm not saying you have to, are the 22J. That's the lead-based paint disclosure. I like to include that up front because I like to, you don't have to, you can, the buyer's agent can throw it in later, but I like to include that up front because then you don't have to add it and counter it when a buyer writes an offer. Does that make sense? So when a buyer writes an offer, they see it as a supplement and then they're going to include in the offer. But if a buyer writes an offer without 22J, well, now you have to add it. And now it's like you're countering, even if you just want to accept it. Talking really fast, but just include the 22J. And this is something that the seller has to fill out. You can't select seller has no knowledge, seller has no reports. You have to confirm that from them, and then you select it. And another thing that people miss all the time is the seller signs this and they initial the first page. We're not going to check this, right? Because the buyer has the opportunity to say waive or accepted the opportunity to inspect if there's lead-based paint. And then they're also going to initial this page, and you as the listing broker and the selling broker are also going to sign this page. Okay. 22K, I include sometimes, I don't include all the time, because I've actually kind of gone back on this, and Sarah, you can tell me what you think, but I used to include in all my listings, but then I was like, well, okay, let's just talk about what 22K is really quick. The 22K is identification of utilities, addendum to purchase and sale agreement. Technically, technically you don't have to include this. So I just let the buyer include this in their offer, because if the buyer doesn't include in their offer, it doesn't negatively affect my seller. So that's my opinion. Do you disagree, Sarah?
So I like to do everything up front just to get it out of the way, but you can actually upload this completely blank. They can send it back to you completely blank. Everybody can sign it. And then there's this lovely little part down at the bottom that says you have 5 days as the broker. You can fill this in for them after it's been signed in the contract completely blank and give it back to the other side, as long as you got your information from your seller.
Beautiful. Okay, last form I want to go over. I'm going to talk about 22E really quick. We've already talked about it. This is a form. I include this one in all my listings because it answers a question for the buyer's agent, because the buyer's agent has to fill this out on the form 21. And so I get ahead of it and I answer it right here. But it's just saying, I am the seller at this property. You select that, and if it's in transaction desk, it'll automatically, I always point at my screen as if people can see what I'm pointing at. Anyways, it'll automatically input the address, and then it will say, I am, it's a double negative. I hate this. I have to read it every time. I am, or I am not, a non-resident alien. Okay. I am not a non-resident alien. And then you're not going to put in their social security, tax ID number to be provided by seller at closing. So to the closing agent, to escrow. So that's all you're filling out. And then the seller's going to sign it. And then the buyer does not sign it, because the buyer is only signing it if the seller is a non-resident alien. Okay, that's it. Really simple. If you have questions about it, let me know. Okay, last form I want to talk about, Form 17. This is a really, really important form. So there's literally, I've already said some of this, excuse me for being redundant. There's actually an RCW that says you have to, as a seller, provide the Form 17. What a lot of people don't know is it says below that you have to, but the buyer can waive their right to receive it. And if the seller doesn't provide it and the buyer doesn't waive the right to receive it, the buyer can back out at any time in the transaction until they've received it, right? So it's kind of like a get out of jail free card. So the reason I say this, getting complicated, but first off, I tell the seller, we have to include this. If you don't include this, the buyer has a get out of jail free card, and they can get out at any time and keep their earnest money, period. So obviously fill it out. But if you're representing a buyer, it's debatable. Like, hey, do you want the Form 17, or do you want the get out of jail free card, right? It's getting really complicated, but that's just something to think about. Really important on the Form 17, it specifically says up here, only the seller can fill it out. You cannot fill it out. So this is one that you send to the seller, give to them by hand, and they have to fill out personally. Nobody else can fill it out. You can, I want to use my words really carefully here. You can explain what things mean, but you cannot help them answer a question. You can't interpret. Does that make sense? You can explain. They say, hey, what does this mean by encroachments, boundary agreements, or boundary disputes? You can explain what those definitions are, but you can't say, yes, you don't have any of those, just press no. Does that make sense? Really, really careful on this, because this is like something that you could really easily get sued for. One last thing I'm going to say on the Form 17, you are exempt if you are selling a home for someone who has passed away. So a probate sale. Obviously, if I'm selling my grandparents' home and they've passed away, I can't fill out a Form 17 because I don't know much about the home. I'm just the executor of the estate. And dear God, I'm totally forgetting the other one. Bank owned. And I think there's one more. So obviously, again, bank hasn't lived in property, so they can't fill out a Form 17. And then Sarah, is there one more? Construction. Well, construction has to fill out some.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some asterisks that say must fill out if it's new build, and do not need to fill out if it's new build. Anyways, that's that. I think there's one more still, but if in doubt, look up the RCW. It says the RCW right up here, and it will tell you who's exempt and who's not exempt.
But if you're not new construction and you're not exempt, you want to make sure they fill out every line and put in all the information. It's really important. And if you get into a transaction with someone who works for one of the big brokerages that are real corporate, they're real sticklers about this. So just save yourself a headache. And there is also a way that you can send this through transaction desk to be filled out. It's really simple. I will send the information to Robin so that she can supply it to all of you.
That would be great. Thank you, Sarah. A point that Sarah was making, just to elaborate on, if something is not applicable, her point is don't leave it blank. Manufactured in mobile homes. Well, it's not manufactured in mobile homes, so I'm just going to skip it. Nope. You want to say not applicable. And the reason is the RCW literally states they have to receive a completed Form 17. And you could debate that if this is not selected, it's not completed. Debatable, but why not just check it? Lastly, anything that has an asterisk, if you select, if the answer is yes to any asterisk items, please explain here. Again, not a completed form unless they really complete it all the way. So once your seller does do the Form 17, review the whole dang thing and make sure, because if your seller didn't do it and then the buyer gets out of jail free on it because they don't have a completed form, you're going to look like the idiot, not the seller, right? And that's it. There's so much more to listing a home, obviously, that we'll get into in future meetings, but that's kind of the listing paperwork through and through. There's so many more forms too that are like for certain different type of property. So just talk to me if you have any questions about those. And yeah, we'll talk more in future meetings. So as always, we conclude by talking about the one habit, and that is making 3 calls and adding 3 people to your database and sending 6 notes, whether they be emails, texts, or handwritten notes. This is just a habit that, we encourage everyone to kind of instill in their business. And that is all, guys. We'll see you next Tuesday. Robin's going to send out an email a bit later, but next Tuesday, we're going to be talking about errors and emissions insurance and things that people are being sued for, real estate agents. So it's going to be really fun, really exciting.
Ooh, so fun. I love getting sued.
Don't get sued.
Don't get sued, exactly. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining. Sorry that one went pretty long, but we'll see you next Tuesday.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.